Hello and welcome to episode 95 of the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I'm good.
How's your week been, Lance?
Really good. Things are calming down. School has started and the big rush is now behind me, and week over week I have...
Rush? Wait, are you joining a fraternity?
Sorority.
Well, we're all glad that your life is calming down. So that's good. We were all worried about you.
I know. I can tell. I understand.
So we came up with a new idea for an episode format here that we're only going to do every once in a while. But why don't you tell the nice people about it, Lance?
This is a TEM takeover. As you hopefully know, Pedal Note Media, which is the company Andrew and I co-own, we have a variety of shows on the podcast network, and one of them is Andrew's The Entrepreneurial Musician. And we are hoping to share some of the insights from the Brass Junkies occasionally on his network, on his show rather, and likewise when there's a show that seems like would be a good fit for our listeners, we're going to record a new intro and play it for you wonderful folks. Also, just as a way for you to find out about the other shows on the network. So if you haven't checked out Andrew's show, you should absolutely do so, and here's your chance. So what we're doing today is we're diving back into the recesses of the entrepreneurial musician. And we're going back to episode 7, where we will hear Andrew talking with Jeff Connor from Boston Brass, who was our former colleague and cohort and frequent
muse.
Definitely muse. Regular punching bag for both Andrew and me. Patient human is another descriptor. So yeah, it's a really cool interview. So we're hoping that you enjoy it.
Guess what, Lance?
I don't know, Andrew. What is it?
I didn't even remember to tell you this. So 2 weeks ago, I got a text from my cousin Sarah.
Sarah.
That Boston Brass was going to be in Oneonta, which is right down the street from where she lives in upstate New York, and that her 2 sons, who are in the middle school band program, were going to get extra credit if they went to the Boston Brass concert. So immediately my brain went to the punching bag place, and I said, can you do me a favor, and do you have $5 extra laying around? And she said, what's that? And I said, I need William and Owen to bring Jeff Connor a jar of pickles on my behalf.
Hey, that's a win.
Right? And Jeff absolutely hates pickles.
Big time.
He needs to go to a therapist to unpack how much he hates pickles.
We regularly played Would You Rather blank or eat a pickle?
Yeah.
And pickle is undefeated. And Andrew and I can come up with some very interesting options, along with JD and Jose and the other guys. It was just
there was one time in particular that I believe we were in Switzerland. We might have been in Spain. Some S country, Slovakia. I don't know. And
Germany.
we were backstage. We had a couple of hours to kill, and that game went for 45 straight minutes. And Jose was piling on, and Chris was piling on, and it got out. So anyway, I got a photo sent from my cousin, which was William and Owen flanking him, absolutely beaming with smiles because you could tell they had just stopped laughing. And Jeff is in the middle, holding a jar of pickles, scowling at the camera, and flipping me the bird. And it instantly became one of my most cherished possessions. So that's just an example. I've been out of the band for 5 years now, and I'm still getting Jeff at Boston Brass gigs, even when I'm about 700 miles away. So I think that sums it up pretty well. Super quickly, Patreon. If you want to become a Patreon patron, you can go to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, and you can unlock a whole bunch of bonus episodes, and you can support the show for as little as $1 per episode. Also, if you go to iTunes, leave us a rating and a review. Those continue to stream in. We're up to almost 130 ratings at this point, which is really awesome. Thank you. That means a lot to us. Why don't you tell the nice people about Duquesne?
Hey, Duquesne University and the Mary Papert School of Music is one of the sponsors for the show, and we couldn't be happier about it. If you want to find out about what's going on at Duquesne in the School of Music, you can click on on the link in the show notes below, and there'll be a page devoted to our listeners, and it will give you all the list of faculty and the groups that you can perform with and audition information. So very special thanks to Jim. Let's keep moving it along. Nova for his sponsorship. Jim, nothing to see here, Nova. And thanks to Duquesne and the Mary Papert School of Music.
Let's keep moving it along. I like it, man. That's pretty good. So we'd also like to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing our hosting. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz artist model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke not quite an artist model euphonium mouthpiece.
Fair.
You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the last thing is a favor. Can you please, if you are friends with Jeff Conner on Facebook, can you please go and leave a photo of a pickle or a jar of pickles or a pickle factory or a T-shirt of a pickle or anything pickle related? Could you leave that on his Facebook wall, please?
Please.
I'm hoping that we could get at least 20 of you to do that, and it'll be kind of a slow release as people listen. That would make Lance and I very happy. I'd almost rather you do that than become a Patreon patron, which makes no sense, but I'm just being honest. So, thank you for listening to TEM. Hope you dig it. You can find out more at andrewhitz.com/TEM. This is actually 150, almost exactly, episodes ago. So this is a long ways back in the Wayback Machine, but I think you're going to really dig this conversation with Jeff Conner of Boston Brass.
Tonight, we are joined by my former colleague in Boston Brass, trumpet player extraordinaire, Jeff Conner. How are you doing this evening, Jeff?
I'm doing great, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Do you miss me?
I'm every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
That almost sounded sincere. So we were colleagues for 14 years, actually.
Yeah, 14 years. That's right.
That ended about a year and a half ago or so when I decided to get off the road and to start podcasting full time. No, that wasn't the real reason. The expanding family was the real reason. So there's a lot that I want to kind of unpack from Jeff and Boston Brass, and it's a very interesting story that you have both as an individual and then as a band. And for those of you who don't know, Jeff is the only original founding member of Boston Brass still with the group. When was the group formed?
The group started back in 1986 when I was finishing up my master's at Boston University. And the group just kind of started as a freelance gig group, and we just enjoyed playing chamber music, brass quintet music. And we started freelancing around the Boston area, then the New England area, and we were doing all sorts of gigs. We were playing weddings, church services, graduations, special events through the convention center, and then we started doing some concerts, and one thing led to another, and here we are today. So, but what was really cool was how, kind of just coming in full circle, one of our first coaches and mentors was Sam Palafian, who now a tuba player in the quintet, and he was your teacher, and it's been great, having him as our first coach. And then over the years, as you know, he wrote for the band, he produced the band, he conducted the band. And so now it's really cool having him in the band.
It was definitely a very cool and very bizarre thing for me to be handing off my gig to my mentor. That doesn't exactly happen all that often. Speaking of Sam Palafian, who was in Empire Brass back then, and they were on the faculty at Boston University, which is where you first encountered him. There was a robust brass quintet scene in Boston, and that's putting it lightly at that time. How many brass quintets were there that were collegiate level or higher that were playing all the time with each other? It was a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I first heard Empire back in got familiar with them back in 1981 when I graduated from high school. I am
old.
I'm old.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. I am old. You know, you can find me on the Facebook. That's right. On the line. Yeah. I went to the Empire Brass Symposium out at Tanglewood between my senior year of high school and freshman year of college, and that was life-changing. I mean, you did it as well.
I did.
And I mean, anyone who's done it, it's just, it was one of the greatest things I've ever done.
It's a transformative experience. It was.
It most certainly was.
Yep.
Yeah, living in those wooden teepees for a summer, and it was awesome. But then, back in the mid '80s, BU was a place to be if you were playing in a brass quintet. Besides us, there was Atlantic Brass, which just had tremendous success right out of the gate. I mean, they were winning every competition, and just a wonderful group. And then there was Paramount Brass, Epic Brass, Beacon Brass, Commonwealth Brass. I mean, just a slew of just fantastic groups, all because of Empire. Right. And I am, whenever we talk to students, the one thing, we talk about how we got started, and my feeling is we were so fortunate to have them as coaches and mentors. And, I really feel that, back in the, that time period, the early 80s, mid 80s, they were, probably one of the best chamber music ensembles in the world, not brass quintets. I mean, that's a given. Nobody could touch them. I know there's some other groups. There's a group up north that plays, but no one could touch Empire as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
So,
well,
you caught that, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, he may have been referring to Canadian Brass, who are still doing pretty well. What I just heard is that you credit them for kind of inspiring you and for sparking that scene, but all of those other groups, with the exception of Atlantic, who are still around, but all of the other quintets other than Atlantic and Boston are not in existence anymore and haven't been for quite some time. So why did Boston Brass initially keep going and then get to that next level, whereas those other groups didn't? I'm not asking you why they didn't. I'm asking you why you did.
Yeah, I think just perseverance. And it's something I wanted to do. I mean, when I first heard Empire, I thought that was the coolest thing. And, just found out what they did. They got to travel all around the world playing music. And I didn't know how they did it at that time, but I was going to try and figure it out. And that seemed like, I want to do that. So that's what I set out to do. And, just never looked back. No one ever, or even if they did, no one really told me I couldn't do it. So I just, figured out a way to make it happen. And it's everybody that's, been in the group over, almost 30 years. Everybody had a hand in it, in some capacity. So it's been a total group effort, every step of the way.
It seems to me like whenever I do like consulting work with brass quintets or coaching or whatever on my travels back then or today, the common question is, how do you go from being a gigging group to then like playing actual concerts? I know the joke when I joined Boston Brass was that a few years earlier that that in your early days that someone would call you and tell you that there was a $100 bill waiting on the Vermont Canada border, and were you willing to go get it, and that you guys would go and get it, and the gas would cost $105.
$5, yeah.
Each person would have to pay $1 to have had the privilege to go play the gig, which is how everybody starts. But it's not as simple as just doing a whole bunch of those gigs and then all of a sudden you just show up at one and it's a concert hall. So how did you get to that point?
Well, again, staying on the perseverance theme, in terms of thinking back in the early, late 80s, early 90s, it was completely different on how no technology in terms of how things are done now as it was then. But it was, myself and the other trumpet player, the original trumpet player at the time, we were on the phone, or I was on the phone 3-4 hours a day calling people. I was looking that's what it took. It took one person, 2 people, just constantly being on the phones and sending information to people, not being afraid of the word no. If I talked to a presenter or somebody that was in the position of hiring us, if they said, they couldn't, I never took it personally. It wasn't because they didn't like me, because they didn't like the group. I took it as just at this time, there's not an opening, or they just can't hire us at this time. So I would always figure out a way. Can I contact you in 6 months? When do you make your decision? Can I still send you information? When would be a good time to call? Always did that. And I think the thing about that, especially young students have to learn about networking, is that networking isn't about instant gratification. It is about fostering relationships over a career. And I think it's just, learning that and just building a database and being persistent. I think that's what it was. And then, it was finding out, every place we played, I would always try to make sure that one would we be invited back, but also were there other contacts, other people we could, that they knew that I could be in touch with. So it was just always constantly networking and making phone calls. That's what it was. And that's even to this day, every group needs that. It just takes somebody, even if the group is, no matter what level they are, it just takes somebody, willing to do, that legwork.
I read recently that you get 9 no's for every yes when you're a salesman. Or salesperson, and I can't remember who the person was. Someone who was a renowned salesman, who he used to say that he would hope that every person that he approached to buy his product would say no, because he knew that every no was one of the 9 and got him closer to the yes.
To the yes.
So that he actively was hoping for one of the no's. And you're just kind of like a bulldog on the phone. And it sounds like the 3 to 4 hours on the phone thing, that sounds like it's just an exaggeration when he says every day. And it's not. I saw it myself. You were just constantly working the phones. And were you comfortable doing that right from the very beginning, or did you kind of grow into that role?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid of it. I wanted to work. I wanted the group to work.
Right.
And it was something I believed in the group. I knew we had something to offer, no matter what, whether it was a wedding, whether it was playing background music at a reception, or, no matter what it was, I knew we had a good product, and, it was I was very comfortable talking about it. And the worst thing that would happen if they said no, but hopefully I would turn that, maybe next time they would say yes.
Sure. I had completely forgotten about this in my show prep, but talking about networking, can you tell me about how you came to know Jack Connor and how he became an asset for the band?
Sure.
No relation. This is a great story.
Yeah, Jack Connors.
Connors, excuse me.
Yeah, years ago we used to be in residence at Boston College, and part of that residency included us playing the Christmas concert with the Boston College Chorale. And it was up at a beautiful church, and it was really a fun concert. And at one of the concerts, I forget what year this was, in the 80s sometime, late 80s. After the concert, I recognized Jack Connors, and I knew he was one of the trustees of Boston College. And Jack Connors also, he's head of Hill Holiday advertising company, which is one of the largest advertising companies in the world. They do Dunkin' Donuts, Bank of America.
Huge firm.
Just a huge firm.
They occupy 2 entire floors of the Hancock Building.
John Hancock Building in Boston. That's right. Yep. Yeah. So afterwards, I saw him, and I went up to him, and I introduced myself. I shook his hand, and I said, "Mr. Connors, thank you so much for coming to the concert." and we just struck up just a really nice. He was so cool, real nice, short conversation. He really enjoyed the concert. I said it was, really great of you to come, and how much fun we had. Where I told him that we were, we do a lot of things here at Boston College, and it's just, really, it's have a great time. And then, kind of at the end, I just said, I would love it. Would it be okay if at some time I could give you a call, just to kind of bend your ear, talk a little bit about going to the next step, putting a press kit together. I kind of told him what we were doing and what we were looking for. And he said, absolutely. He gave me his card, and it wasn't like, just a regular business card. It was one of those really heavy, nice linen stock business cards. Yeah, it was
fancy.
Yeah, it was. And he was just so kind and so gracious with his time. It was like, oh, that's wonderful. And so I called him, and we ended up, he invited us in, the whole group.
How long did you wait to call him?
That was probably beginning of the week, Then, I mean, it was a weekend, so probably Monday or Tuesday. I called him for first thing, and he invited us in, and it turned out he invited us to his office, which was amazing, and he ended up setting up a 3-team pro bono team that worked with us designing a whole entire new press kit. He helped, and this team helped with our first professional photo shoot.
That was right after I joined.
That was, exactly. And I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And the people there were just top notch.
Yeah, people that do that kind of thing for a living, like full time.
Yeah. And it was all pro bono, and it was just, he liked what he heard at the at the concert, and realized that we were, working hard. And it's just, as you meet people, and as, we get older, it's that whole adage, passing it on.
Right.
We try to help, young students and young people, whatever we can do, to help get them to their next level in their career. And that's what he did, and it was fantastic. It really helped get us to the next level, just in terms of the branding part of Boston Brass. We were at that time really kind of developing a Boston Brass sound, with the personnel and with the arrangements. But now we had this, this was before the internet, before, having all the videos and all that.
Sure.
So we had a professional photo shoot. So we had great photos and a nice press kit that looked professional. So that really helped. And it was just because I went up and just introduced myself, said hello. He could have been just like, oh, hi, great job, or, nice concert, and just turn around to the people he was talking to. But yeah, just that was the worst thing that could have happened.
Sure.
But it turned out being great. I mean, one of the best things that happened to the group.
I think there's a lot of people listening that would not that would have been too scared to, not meaning terrified, but our producer buddy is nodding his head yes. Not like you'd be terrified. I mean, he's a friendly guy, but just it's funny how we use fear to talk ourselves into inaction. Because it's a lot safer to just stay on the other side of the room, And
yeah.
I bet you a whole lot of people didn't, especially back then, did not just walk up to him and ask him for stuff, because he was one of the 10 most powerful businessmen in the entire city of Boston.
Yeah.
At the time, easily, if not top 5. And so there was just kind of a, he was revered. So it's just, not the first guy that you walk up to just say like, hey, my name's Jeff. What can you do for me? Which you did a much more polite job of that, and you found a common point.
But that's what it boiled down to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it's like this was a great opportunity, and it was the vibe was good just because of, the setting.
Sure.
And he seemed like, he was in a good mood. He had a smile on his face, and, it was a good concert. So what have I got to lose?
That's great.
And it's just, walking up with confidence, being able to talk about your product, being able to shake hands. That seems like a really trivial thing, but being able to shake hands with confidence, look somebody in the eye, introduce yourself, at the end, be able to say thank you.
Right.
All those are, again, seem things like you learn in kindergarten or really trivial things, but that stuff goes a long ways. I mean, just saying thank you. No matter what kind of gig you were on or what kind of situation you are in at the moment, you always say thank you.
Yep. Very interesting. I'm in the process of reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, which I don't know if you know that book or not, but
I've heard of it. Yeah,
it's great. It's really great. He's clinically insane, but it's a really great book, and it's not just about only working 4 hours a week, but it talks about getting over fears and talks about thinking outside of the box. And one of the things that he instructs you to do in the middle of the book is to, in 2 different public places, to lie down on the ground or on the floor for no reason whatsoever for like 10 full seconds, and then to get up. He's like, it could be on the sidewalk, it could be like, at a restaurant, it could be anywhere. And just the point that he makes is that thinking outside the box gets you nowhere, that you have to like do outside of the box, and that doing something like that, because then you realize that people look at you like you're crazy, because you are. And
just like that time we were up in upstate New York doing a bunch of some concerts and clinics, and we had that reception with a bunch of band directors. And then at one part of the restaurant, then the other part of the restaurant, there was this party. Some kind, I don't know, kids. I don't know. There was some kind of party.
It was it was a birthday party.
Yeah.
There were 2 like function rooms next to the. This was in Oswego, New York. I forgot about this.
That's right. And
we collected a bunch of money to get you to go in there and to
Gabe
DiMartino right?
said, I want you to go in there and just start talking and make a toast to the people for so long, for 1 minute or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay. So Gabe walks in. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Connors."
Yeah,
so I just walk in,
and he sold it like the place clapped for you. But
I just
he
walk
did,
in,
and it was,
and just start talking to all these kids. I mean, they were like teenagers, and then all the parents were there.
Yep.
And I just started, talking to them
about
how great Oswego was and what a great week we've had here, and we look forward to coming back. And it's just
he was completely
completely
uninvited. Yeah,
but then we got cake out of it.
Yeah, we got cake.
And I made $20 or whatever it was.
Yeah, You just informed our audience how little money it takes to.
I mean $2,000.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah.
I may or may not also have a video of us coughing up like $250 or something to get Jeff to eat a chicken foot at a restaurant in Hong Kong once. So
that's a great story.
That was good. So there's not too many entrepreneurial lessons in that one though. So I think we'll save that for your Brass Junkies appearance. So
there you go.
Yeah, so I think that there's a whole lot of people, like by show of hands, a lot of people are raising their hands as they drive in their cars right now, listening to the podcast of like how many people would have been scared to just walk up to Jack Connors and say that. There's a really great lesson in there. And like you say, the worst thing that happens is that they say no. Even if he had been rude to you, I mean, even if he said, "Get the heck away from me," do you know who I am? Then you've gleaned some data from the situation.
Exactly.
You're not getting anything out of that guy. So
yep. So it was a great time. Yeah.
Hey Jeff, you said that you had recognized him from across the room. Well, was that just because of all the stuff you've done at the college, or did you maybe take the time to try to know some of the movers and shakers in the area?
Knowing the movers and shakers in the area, looking who the trustees were, because it turned out one of the I had a student there at Boston College, and his parents were trustees of BC. So just kind of learning, who everybody was in that world. Not that I would have their phone numbers or anything like that, but just in case they were there, because we were doing a lot of events at BC. So just in case one of them showed up, I was ready to go and introduce myself and know who they were, knew a little bit about them. And he was pretty recognizable. I mean, he was a very distinguished looking guy. And like Andrew said, I mean, he was one of the bigwigs, in Boston, so really well known.
Right. Just another one of those being prepared once the opportunity strikes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Situations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I even got to go to the Hill Holidays luxury box at Fenway Park. So as a result of that, after that photo session, Amy was like, Amy was saying how they had a box. I was like, boy, I sure wish I could go to that sometime. And she said, are you busy tonight? I said, no. And she said, okay. And then I said, can I bring a friend? And she said, sure. So, yeah, that worked out well. So
I even think they got us. Did they get us the gig playing at Fenway?
They did.
Yeah,
they did.
The national anthem at Fenway
before a Pedro Martinez start in 2001. Yeah. That was so long ago. That was when the Red Sox were not an embarrassment, actually. So
now they're in the clubhouse texting.
Snapchat
or on the Facebook. Or whatever they do.
Yes, Pablo is on the Facebook. Yes. So anyway, me complaining about the Red Sox also does not have too many entrepreneurial lessons in it. So, okay, so you got on the phone all the time. You're talking to presenters. You're doing this. You talked about, when you first started that you were basically playing other people's arrangements, and then that you had started to develop your own sound. Why did you realize that you needed to develop your own sound, and then how did you go about doing it?
Well, we learned that from Empire. I mean, they were always telling us, write your own music. And we were, playing a lot of the standard literature. I mean, we needed to learn that. So we dove into all of that, the standard quintet literature, but also, buying arrangements of tunes. And then the other trumpet player, Rich Waddell, he was an incredible arranger.
Yeah,
he was copious amounts of music. I mean, so he was writing for the band. But then kind of the whole change of the path, we kind of changed the direction of the band was when J.D. Shaw joined the band. Mm-hmm. And that was, what he brought to the group, I mean, kind of set us on the path, because he brought, I mean, so many incredible talents to the band, not only in his playing but also in his arrangements, but then also his kind of just philosophy of performance.
Right.
He came from the drum and bugle corps background.
Right.
And I mean, as we had memorized a little bit of the show, the end of our closer, maybe we had our opener memorized, and he just said, let's memorize the show. And we were kind of all taken aback, and then we all agreed, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
It was really awesome that the band actually decided to memorize the entire show the week that I got the gig. Was when you guys decided, you're like, well, we've all been playing this music, so let's memorize it. And by the way, new guy, here's a 2-hour show. Memorize it. And I was like, you guys are real peaches. Thank you so much.
Hey, no problem. But yeah, and everybody memorizes the book and memorizes music differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while.
Mm-hmm.
For like Rich Kelly, who was playing lead trumpet at the time. He read the after he played each piece once, it was memorized. For me, I mean, it took a while. It took a long time. I was. Okay, let's learn these 4 measures. Let's learn these 4 measures. Now let's put these 8 measures together. Let's learn another 4. And just, it was kind of like that.
Sure.
And we were all patient with one another, and we got it down. And then I don't know what the first concert was, but we kind of set a date. Let's do it, and we did it. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
It might have been Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It was like late August of 2000, something like that. And that, of course, was all driven by wanting to be able to interact with the audience more and to take the layer of the music stands down.
Yeah.
And obviously, I had no part of that decision. That was made as I came in the door. But that was a really smart decision from a branding perspective.
Yeah, and really, no other groups were doing it like that, at the time.
No other brass groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was that, again, kind of set us apart, and also the JD's arrangements.
Right.
And then we were, by then we were playing all of our own pieces.
Right.
So everything. So he was writing for the strengths of the band.
Right.
So, if he wanted to write jazz and write changes, for whoever could do that, he would.
Yep.
So it's, and that's what has to be done. I mean, and JD said, and I think we all talk about it. I first heard it from him. You have to be not just consumers of music, but producers of music.
Right.
That's what it takes.
Not that they're the only ones that have this perspective, but JD, coming from the drum and bugle corps, side of things, as you talked about, one thing I noticed when I joined the band was that he was very end-user oriented, which, yes, he wrote intelligently and he wrote arrangements that we could all play, but he was very concerned with flow and with the audience experience, which I think a lot of young brass groups are. Not that this is news to anyone. Like, you should make sure the audience enjoys it. It's like, oh, good, I'm really glad I listened to this podcast. I never would have thought of that on my own. Everyone knows that, and yet it's tricky. And that's the thing with drum corps, the way that JD writes for drum corps, is that it doesn't matter how clever it is. It has to sound good. It has to look good. There has to be continuity to the story, all of that stuff, and it all has to affect the audience in a certain way, or else he was never afraid to cut ideas out of things if they weren't working. So
absolutely, and that came from we learned that from the Empire School, with the performance classes. I mean, it wasn't just how you play the music, it was how you walk on stage, how you introduce the piece, how you bow, how you smile, how you walk off stage, everything, the entire presentation. So it's
I've got a VHS tape of my first performance class when I was 14 years old at Tanglewood, and I was too young to be scared of anything. I was fearless, just kind of attacking the tuba part. But then as soon as I was done, it's the most rigid, awkward bow you've ever seen in your life. And I'm like, I'm like 8 feet tall and weigh like 110 pounds. And it's like, it's spectacularly bad. I need to get that done to convert it into digital and put that on YouTube. What has been the hardest part about keeping a group that has attained success? Boston Brass has now performed in 49 states and over 30 countries. What's the hardest part about sustaining success of a group like yours?
I think it's being fresh in the programming. I think it is, just keep producing. The thing that keeps me going, or I think one of the scariest things is, people realizing that as a chamber musician, or if you're a freelancer, that, looking a year ahead, in the case of a chamber musician, a year ahead, there's zero income.
Yeah.
So there's no guaranteed income, whether you're going to make, $10,000 or $500,000.
Right.
So, basically you start at, a year and a half ahead with a blank slate.
Right.
And it's like, okay, get to work. I mean, that's what gets me going. That's what lights my fire.
That's scary before you get married and before you have a kid. But then afterwards, it's like it's a whole nother layer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's not just you. It's with, your 4 other colleagues, 5 other, 2 other, whatever, however large your ensemble is. And, I think that's just, it can be daunting at times.
Right.
And that's basically how I've been living my life for, almost 30 years. Is, looking a year ahead. Okay, I have no income next year. Get to work. What am I going to do? So
Seth Godin, who's one of my favorite authors, his book Linchpin, which I mentioned in one of the previous interviews of the Entrepreneurial Musician. Everyone out there should read it. It's incredible. It's transformative, like the Empire Brass Seminar, but in a book form that you can buy for $10. He talks about people who are always procrastinating. And that procrastinators who wait until the very last minute and then do everything at the last minute, that the reason that they do that is because basically when the moment that the fear of failing to do the task becomes greater than the fear of not doing it well or good enough, as soon as it gets greater, that's when they do it. And that procrastinating is just fear of not doing it right. So you just wait until tomorrow. You wait till tomorrow. You wait till tomorrow. Sure. And all of a sudden you realize that you're going to get in trouble, so then you do it. There's really no time for that in the chamber music world.
No.
Because if you put it off, then there's no guarantee that there is any tomorrow. Can you talk to me about how Boston Brass came to be first affiliated with Conn-Selmer and then with Jupiter? Just kind of a short version of how you teamed up with those 2 instrument companies.
Sure. Again, going back, I couldn't tell you what year, but a while ago, I got hired to do a chamber music festival in Pennsylvania, and it was all just freelance musicians. I couldn't even tell you how I got the gig, but it was a lot of fun. And the tuba player there was Scott Mendoker, and I never met him before. And just throughout the course of the 3 or 4 days down there, got to know Scott.
Great guy.
Out. Yeah. And, he struck out. I was telling him about the group. I think he had heard of the quintet. And at the time, he was working, I think, with Dylan Music and doing some stuff with design stuff with United Musical Instruments. And at that time, United Musical Instruments was an umbrella company that had C.G. Kahn, it had King, Binge, Armstrong, just a whole conglomerate of instrument companies under one umbrella. Mm-hmm. And he said, are you working with an instrument company? And I said, no, but boy, we'd love to. And I was asking about what he was doing with UMI and what he was doing. So he was telling me all about that. And I just, asked, is there anybody there that, maybe I could contact? Maybe they'd be interested. And he said, absolutely. I think they could, it'd be great to have, if they had a group like yours. So he gave me the name Helen Wilson who was, in charge of the artists there at the time. So I ended up calling Helen and, upon Scott's recommendation and, kind of gave all the information, and that's how we joined, UMI. Began that relationship. Then that became Conn-Selmer. And then, we had, I don't know how long our tenure was with Conn-Selmer, but, 5-6 years
about
or so.
7 years, something like that.
7 years?
Yep.
Yeah. And, that was all great. And then towards the end of that, there were a lot of changes being made in the company. And a lot of the people were going over to Jupiter. And some of the district managers, some of the upper management, and then we found out that Fred Powell, who designed the Conn Vintage 1 trumpets and flugelhorns, which are just incredible instruments, was going to do the design of the new XO trumpet for Jupiter. And then we found out that Sam Palafi and Pat Sheridan were doing the design of the tubas and all that over there. So we're like, wow, they're doing something over there. And long story short, we ended up having a meeting with the folks at Jupiter, and I think, well, you do also. The first meeting we had with the then president, we walk into a conference room, and one of the first things he did was point to a poster of a middle school student playing clarinet or saxophone or something, and said, "This is what we're all about. We're all about music education."
Right.
And that hit home.
Right.
That was pretty cool. That's what we were. Those were the magic words for us. And it just, Then we moved over to Jupiter Band Instruments and became educational ambassadors over there. And it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, great
ever since. Yeah.
So I actually, it's funny. I never knew the Scott Mendoker, who's tuba player, used to teach at Rutgers. Still plays a lot.
He's at Hart. Yeah, he's
head
of the brass department at Hart School of Music.
You were fearless in terms of asking him, saying like, "Hey, what about us?" And also, in the music business in general, the important people who have the important contacts, they don't shake your hand and say, "Hi, my name's Scott Mendoker," when you first met at the before the first rehearsal, and say, "And I've got a lot of influence." Trumpet players do that, as you and Buddy know, but that the rest of us, that just doesn't really happen that way. If you had not been playing well and easy to work with and personable and all of that, then I don't think that he would have been calling Helen to give a recommendation. So it's a small business. You never ever know.
It absolutely is. I mean, and that's, I'm sure we all tell students, as you get older, further in your career, it's the music world just gets smaller and smaller, and everyone is 1 or 2 degrees of separation. It's pretty incredible, how small the music world is.
I know that you were joking about it before. I know you're not on Facebook, but nowadays you search for somebody, you hear a name, you're not sure. If I'm not friends with them, then there's always, anywhere from 15 to 200 people that I have in common, and you can kind of see there's 7 people who I know all went to Eastman. I mean, you can just tell just from who their connections are. You can tell where they came from, and you can kind of start to piece things together. Yeah, it's a really really small business. That story reminds me of a great story that I know you've heard. Rich Kelly, our good friend and former lead trumpet player for Boston Brass before Jose Sabaja took over from him. This was the summer after his freshman year at Juilliard. Yeah. He was playing a gig in Central Park in August. New York City is my favorite city in the whole world. It is not a pleasant place to be in the summertime. The pavement is just emanating heat. It smells. It's horrible. And he was playing all marches, and he was playing third trumpet, as he describes it, just dut, 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 dut for, for a couple hours. Yeah. And there was a woman next to him who was playing second trumpet, and Rich introduced himself, and he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And she said, "You sound really good." And he said, "Thank you very much." And I can't imagine how young he must have looked, because he looks young now in his, in his late 40s, but he's got a baby face, so he probably looked like he was about 12 at the time. And one of the best musicians I've ever played with. And maybe 20 minutes later, she said, "You sound really good," because he was playing these easy parts, but playing them really well. And he said, "Thank you so much." And then another 20 minutes later, this is one of those gigs where I'm sure the attitudes of the people in the band were probably quite varied, if you will. Probably some people were complaining, and Rich was not. And she said, "You sound phenomenal." And he said, "Thank you very much." And she said, "Have you ever played on Broadway?" And he said, "Nope." And she said, "Have you ever wanted to?" And he said, "Yup." It turns out that this woman was not just someone who had some pull on at Kiss of the Spider Woman, which was one of the biggest shows on Broadway at the time. She was the contractor for the entire thing. Like, she was the only human being who decided who played and who did not play. And she was blown away by his musicianship and by his professionalism, and how when she commented, he just kept saying thank you. He wasn't saying, "Oh, the parts are easy," or he just said thank you and closed his mouth.
That's where it goes down to, just being easy to work with. Again, the saying thank you, not complaining about the conditions, not complaining about what kind of money he may have been getting, or about the conductor or other musicians. Or
that goes for bands too. Yep.
Yeah,
but he ended up working so much that he dropped out of Juilliard partway through his next year, because he was working so much that he couldn't go to class. Mm-hmm. So and it was largely because of that, which I love telling that story. Mm-hmm. You, along with our dear friend John Laverty, who's the former director of bands at Syracuse University and still does some teaching there, you guys wrote a book. Can you tell us about that book?
We did. It's called The Portfolio Musician: Case Studies in Success. And the bulk of the book is interviews. We interviewed various musicians of various stages in their careers. Some who had just graduated from college and just starting their career, some who are kind of right in the middle of their careers, and then people who have been in the business for 30, 40, 50 years, people like Bobby Shew.
Right.
And just, we asked them a whole bunch of questions, and, the goal was of the book, and reason doing it was so students or people reading the book could identify with several of these musicians, who wished, I'd love to be doing what they do. How did they do that? How did they figure it out? What advice can I get from them? What lessons can I apply, from what they did that I can do? And then there's some other chapters that, I wrote a chapter, John wrote a couple chapters, and, it's really pleased with how it came out. I mean, it's really informative. There's some great stories, with people, with who we interviewed, and it's an ebook. Now you can find it on any e-platform.
It's a really, really great resource. You read those things and you hear a lot of commonalities in them, but also you realize that there's a seemingly infinite number of paths that you can take to quote unquote making it, whatever the heck that means in the music business.
I mean, the music business, music world is extremely vast, but I mean, one of the common factors we found, or one of the underlying keys, or things we found were be great at one thing and be really, really good at two or three other things.
I like that.
And if you can accomplish that, you're going to do okay in music. But really learn and really work being great at one thing and then good at a few other multiple things, because that's what it is. It's having that portfolio career, different income streams, that that everybody has. And it could be not only just playing, but it could be engineering. It could, and we were talking before the podcast. You producing,
yep.
Doing that, and like Sam, he does that, and Jose and Domingo, in Boston Brass, they do a lot of producing. They do a lot of studio work, things like that. A lot of writing. So it's just being really good, finding other things that you can do in order to create one income,
right?
Sustainable income.
What gave you guys the idea to do the book?
We had been talking, just John and I, good friends, and I think after kind of the big recession back in the late 2000s, just talking about, every time we would talk, he would ask what we've been doing, where are we going, where have we been, are you as busy as you were last year, are you busier this year, and then it was, has the recession hit you guys, has it really taken a toll? And we were talking about that, and it's like, well, not really. Still working really hard, and then talking about other people that we're still doing really well. It's like, well, why are they doing really well? Right. I wonder what they're doing. Why are these people working and these people aren't working? Why is this group working? Why is this group not working? And we just started, kind of talking about that, and, from different people we knew, and then just kind of decided, let's interview these people and find out why, what it is, what makes them tick, kind of their path. We came up with a questionnaire, and then sent it out, and then that's just kind of how the book started. So we have 47, I think there's 47 interviews, and then 5 or 6 other in the book.
I'm almost done with my questionnaire. I'm going to send it. I'm going to send it to you next week.
Man.
I had every intention of doing it, like every intention, and then I was like, and then I heard you say like, yeah, I just came out with a book. I was like, yeah, I think I can take that off of my to-do list. Oh man, there you go, Johnny.
It's not just brass players.
Correct.
Of course, we all know, and we didn't want it to be really trumpet heavy, but there's brass players, but we have people in all walks of life, from band directors at middle school, high school, college level, to motivational speakers, to people in the engineering world, in the composing world, just everything, every walk of life, symphony musicians, chamber musicians. So it's pretty vast. Opera. It's choral, conducting. So it's just, there's something for every musician out there.
So
in terms of to learn from.
Yeah, it's great. Everybody should pick it up. Who has your favorite story in the book? Or what's one that comes to mind? That's the patented Jeff Connor sigh.
Yeah, boy. I think,
you're about to hurt 46 people's feelings.
Yeah, they're all great. They really are. They really are. There's not one that it's more. Everyone worked really hard to get where they are and to be successful.
Right.
There's no shortcuts. It's working hard every day. It's you think you're practicing hard, you're not. You got to practice harder. You got to practice more.
And you got to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. Be persistent. Say yes to as many opportunities as you can. Never stop learning.
Right.
Don't be afraid of the word no. Don't, just say yes whenever possible.
Right.
It's just accept any challenge. It's all kind of the same thing.
Yep.
You really have to work hard.
It's fascinating to me that book is basically the same interview over and over and over again, and it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. And there's like none of it's redundant.
None of it's no.
Yeah, none of it's redundant, but it's all kind of saying the same. Well, it's like every business book under the sun. Like you could boil it down to about 1,000 words. They all say the same thing. It's just different takes. And I love the no thing. I heard another great quote from this 4-hour work week. This was a quote from the founder of IKEA, whose name is escaping me right now. But to paraphrase, he said that the only people who don't ever fail are people who are asleep.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really great quote. You just said, accept all challenges. And if it's something that by definition you're going to succeed at no matter what, that's not a challenge. I mean, that's a chore, That's a task.
Yep.
Challenge means that you might fail, you might not fail. When we asked Buddy and Austin from Fredericksburg Brass Institute to produce our podcast for us, they'd never done that before. I mean, and we asked them because we were quite confident that they were going to do a great job, which they're doing. But it's not like Buddy said, well, I've succeeded every time I've attempted to produce podcasts, so sure, I'll just, they didn't know, and they said yes. It's all about, you're right, saying yes and accepting all challenges. So
it was a confident yes.
It was a confident yes.
That's what sold it.
Your voice cracked, but it was cute. Yeah, it was endearing. So.
I've been silent for the last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's what'll happen.
No, I meant when you answered yes about the podcast. I didn't mean just now.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Right now.
For those of you who listen to the Brass Junkies, whenever Austin and or Buddy are on the podcast, Lance and I tend to bust on them both a lot. We're just jealous because they really have their stuff together at an early age, which we kind of resent. So we just, rather than using that to inspire ourselves to better career, we just belittle them. So it's very entrepreneurial.
It makes getting our feelings hurt later on much easier.
Exactly.
It doesn't hurt as bad.
I'm preparing you for the 9 no's, man. Yeah, it's like I'm your self-appointed mentor. So
I get 9 of those every phone call we have.
Oh man! All right, so
so that's pretty much how the book came about. And then John, there was at one point John found a quote and sent to me, and I think that kind of summed up why we needed to do the book. Mm-hmm. He sent me a quote by Quincy Jones from the early 1950s, and it was he said, "We had the best jazz band in the planet, but yet we were literally starving. That's when I discovered that there was music and there was the music business. If I were to survive, I would have to learn the difference between the two."
That's awesome.
That's a pretty powerful quote from one of the most,
he ended up landing on his feet.
From one of the greatest musicians of the, 20th century,
Yep.
So I was like, he's, if he had to figure it out, we all have to figure it out.
Yep.
And I don't think, thinking about, being the entrepreneurial musician, thinking about, why business is important for all musicians, it's not detracting from your art or what you have to say in music, but, it doesn't matter how great you sound in the practice room.
Right.
There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, there sure is. Well, we've gotten to the closing 5 questions segment, and here they are. First question, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Never be afraid of the word no.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think I actually heard that got that from my high school band director, Al Easer. Yeah, don't be afraid. Just, you got nothing to lose.
Number 2, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made in your career? Other than hiring me.
Now I got to think of something else. Let's see. I think it's more, on the personal side with dealing with money, and really getting everything, saving money and learning about money at an early age, learning about debt at an early age. And that's one thing that really scares the hell out of me now in talking to young students is them coming out of school with tremendous amount of debt.
Yeah.
There was an article in CNN Money, a couple years ago, and it was about an electric bass player that had just graduated from Berklee School of Music in Boston. And he graduated with a performance degree in electric bass playing. And besides getting a degree bachelor's degree from Berkeley in electric bass, he also got a wonderful gift of $183,000 in student loan debt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think, that scares me. And I think looking back, I wish that someone had told me to, be thinking about money, be wise about money, save your money, learn about money, take an economics class, take a marketing class, take an accounting class.
Right.
Just be thinking about this stuff because you're going to need it, and the books weren't written then. I mean, it wasn't, no colleges were doing that,
right.
Back in the early 80s, no conservatories per se were, talking about the business of music.
Yeah, there was no Savvy Musician book. There was this podcast. There was, none of that. And there were other podcasts and other books, and none of that existed. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Interesting. And we won't go into the particulars, but many, many, many years ago, we had a manager in Boston Brass who stole almost $30,000 from us.
Yeah, I have no problem. Yeah, real quickly, Brenda Trawick from Trawick Artists. Yeah.
There you go.
She bought community concerts, drove it into the ground. The band Boston Brass almost had to break up because of it.
Yeah,
we were out doing the community concerts.
It was bad.
And she was taking the money. She was taking the employees' money. It was awful. Fortunately, we figured out a way to make it work. That was.
I was still young. I was only like 20. I was, I think, 26 maybe when that happened, and I didn't have a nest egg. I just, I was like, when I got money, I spent it. I had to move in with my parents. This was like after winning like a major professional audition. And then we got hired for gigs, and then we went and we played them, and we got standing ovations, and then I couldn't pay my bills. It's like I was okay with not getting gigs or not winning the job or whatever, but it's like it was amazing that it broke down at that point in the process. But you never know. You got to be smart about your money at all times.
There are still groups that haven't been paid.
Yeah.
That are still owed money.
Yeah, we got creative with our.
We persevered. We figured out a way how to make it work, working with the presenters we had coming up and keeping the name. Yep. Preserving the name and the reputation of Boston Brass.
That was a real entrepreneurial moment and just a growth moment for us because I remember vividly. It was after a concert. I think we were down south somewhere, like South Carolina, something like that, where we met in the parking lot afterwards, and it was heated.
What do we do?
Yeah. What do we do exactly?
Do we shut it down? Do we get involved in the class action lawsuit with other groups?
Yeah,
we decided not to do that because of the how would that affect us? How would that affect the brand in the future with other presenters? Or do we figure it out with other presenters and, we kind of figure out how the whole chain of money got through community concerts and through our management. So we work with the presenters.
We ended up putting money in escrow, and then eventually a judge said, yep, that's your money. And yeah. So if you're a really young, like possible professional musician, you should totally do it. The music business is awesome. So, no, the moral of the story is that was 13. That was 14 years ago. So it all works out. It all works out how it's supposed to work out. So,
and if anyone's interested, they Google. There's a great article about the demise of community concerts and what she did. It was I think there's a great article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
I don't know if I even read that.
It's all kind of going how it was. Basically, this was. An opera, what it was, it's completely operatic in nature. It had the charming and ambitious impresario. It had a cast of characters that trusted her and then accused her of betrayal.
Wow.
There was the whole plot revolved around a trio of tenors.
Three
mo tenors. Yep. There was a large secondary cast of performers, including us, Boston Brass, volunteer music lovers around the country. Oh. There were a chorus of lawyers and bounced checks that totaled over $2 million. In the final scene, death of a beloved artistic institution known as community concerts. I mean, it was the Enron of the classical music world.
Yeah. Can you tell Jeff Connor's fired up, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was. It was really crazy. It was, and this community concerts had been around for over 100 years. Like we're talking like vaudeville and some of the most famous, Roy Rogers, I mean, like some of the most famous performers you've ever heard of were on these, like this series, these very stages, that we were playing on, and that whole scandal brought the whole thing to a screeching halt. So, okay, good. That was a long question too, but that was my fault. No, it's my fault. Number 3, what is a business or entrepreneurial book other than The Portfolio Musician that you'd recommend to musical entrepreneurs?
Oh, that's easy. Dave's book, Savvy Musician. I mean, that's a must. I mean, I'm sure everybody said that. I mean, that's Dave Cutler's book. Yeah. That's.
Yep. You're the second guest in a row to say that.
He actually gave. There's a whole chapter that in my book that Dave gave us that he couldn't use in one of his newer books, so he allowed us to use his chapter. There's a whole David Cutler chapter in the book. So it's great.
Awesome.
So I would definitely recommend that. I mean, he's on the cutting edge. I mean, he's the guy.
Yeah, he's really great. Number 4, what is the one trait you most look for in a colleague?
I mean, besides from, the obvious, being a great musician, I think it's being easy to work with, being able to, someone you want to be on stage with, be in a long car ride with, just, being a collaborator. I think that's really important, especially in a chamber music setting. And it doesn't always work. I mean, we all know stories of chamber music groups and orchestras, and where people don't, sit next to one another or go on stage, and it is what it is. But I think for me, it's just knowing, and it's again, it comes down to a first impression. Really, I remember when Jose joined the band. He came and played for us, and we started with just the two of us doing some duets together. And after about 8 measures, I knew that I don't have to play anymore. This is the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it. Yeah, absolutely. And then over the course of the day and the days following, just getting to know him, it's like, yeah, this is the guy.
Right.
So.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's also in terms of how Boston Brass is set up, it's bringing in a partner. It's not bringing in an employee. So we're an equal partnership. So whether you've been in the band for a day or for 30 years, 1/5 owner, 1/5 the pay.
Right.
So that's bringing in a partner.
Right. And number 5, was there a specific moment where you realized that you wanted to play in a brass quintet for a living?
After hearing Empire Brass, yeah. And going to Tanglewood, 1981, to the Empire Brass Symposium.
Right.
And hearing them play every day, that was it. I knew, I had no idea. Again, like we said earlier in the show, I didn't know how they did it or what it takes to do that, but I was going to figure it out.
That's great. They obviously inspired you.
It did, absolutely. And now, now having Sam in the band, it's really amazing. He's just a walking encyclopedia. He is the true sense of the word. He's a master teacher. He was your teacher. Everybody. He's the guy to go to.
Yep.
When we had, that's how we joined, or how you joined Boston Brass, was because of Sam.
Yep.
We called him. We had an emergency. Our tuba player at the time had gotten sick, and we called Sam, and he said, "I got the guy. He's a great sight reader," and boom, there. You came on board.
Yep.
So it was just, it's been great having him in the band, and Domingo, as both Sam and Domingo in the band now, and just want to keep it going.
Cool. Before we sign off, where's the best place for people to find you, Jeff Connor?
Not the Facebook, not the Twitter, or Snapchat, or any of those things. You can find me, on our website, bostonbrass.com.
Mm-hmm.
My email is bostonbrass.conner, CONNER @gmail.com. You can find the book, Portfolio Musician Case Studies in Success, on any platform, any e-platform. It's on Amazon and iBooks and all that. Boston Brass does have a Facebook page that's, and Twitter and all that. So you want to, check that. Definitely check that out, the group's Facebook page. And all the guys have, all the other guys have Facebook pages. And so, and we have a new CD that just came out a few months ago called Rewired. So
and you got another recording
CD
coming up, right? Yeah.
Coming up, end of the summer. You're going to do another one, and so
great, cool. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you for inviting me. Great spending time with you.
Yeah,
buddy, great hanging out with you as well.
Great talking to you as well.
Yeah, man.
He was impressively silent, wasn't he?
Yeah.
We threatened him early on that if there was any extraneous noises. So, all right. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.